Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Mo Money podcast and another listener series episode. For this episode, I'm interviewing Erika who reached out to me over email. She heard my call out for people to interview for my listener series of the Mo Money podcast. She had a fabulous email, her whole kind of life story, which I was like in awe of because she's gone through a lot and overcome a lot and is super inspiring. So I'm very much looking forward to sharing my interview with her with you right now. Thanks, Erika, for joining me on the show for another listener series episode. I'm so glad you reached out with your very long, detailed email about your story. I really appreciated it. I'm so excited for you to share your story with everyone because it is very fascinating and diverse. And let's just start.
Yeah, for sure.
Where do you want to start? You tell me. You just go. Let's do this.
Let's start, I guess, from the beginning. So
that's always a good place.
I figure that's pretty good. So I was born to young immigrant parents, and we came over from the Communist Czech Republic when I was about 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in Montreal till I was 5 and then moved out towards Calgary. And I've pretty much raised out there. And we struggled quite a bit. My father had a really hard time having consistent work. And then my mother got pregnant when I was 9 and had my brother, and then never went back after her mat leave. And so we ran out of money. And after about a really tumultuous year, we were both, my brother and I, who was 2 at the time and I was 11, were apprehended from my parents by social services. And so we were in foster care for 1.5 years. And we got.
That must have been really tough.
It was really tough. But, my brother, I wanted my brother when my mom was pregnant with him, I was thrilled. And I knew it was a boy and so he was my everything. And so we kind of helped each other along the way. And then spent the 1.5 years in foster care, and we got really lucky. We had good foster parents. And then another couple came along and adopted us, and it was really serendipitous. We met in June, and we moved in with them in August. Yeah, wow. And it just kind of fit. That's and quick. It worked. And by that time, I was 13, and my brother was 3. So, yeah.
Wow.
And I guess the big shock after being adopted and going through that whole process was just the juxtaposition of the finances, like just the way of life from being beneath the poverty line for so long to basically upper middle class.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And, so that was pretty much my upbringing. And then at 23, I got diagnosed with MS. And that kind of, that was a big shock. And then I spent most of my 20s, frantic. Either I oscillated between, hoarding my money and being very, I have to save for the future and be able to take care of myself, and YOLOing, just, trips and, I deserve furniture and, the new car. And I think part of that was trying to find the self-worth that I think I lost with that MS diagnosis. So.
Yeah, that's a big, change to your life, especially having that diagnosis so young. And yeah, I can absolutely see how that can affect how you I mean, not just like your overall life, but, you know, specifically when it comes to your finances, it's like you want to prepare for your future, but then you also want to take advantage of the moment. And yeah, that can get, you know, confusing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
yeah.
And then I was at a point, so that was, 23. And then around 25, I was laid off from work. And
and what did you do?
I'm a nurse, so I was at a clinic, and they did some shuffling of staff, and then I was the last one hired and temporary, and so off I went. And instead of getting EI, I was too proud, and I had this kind of not wanting to emulate what my biological parents had done. So not wanting to, like, EI to me was welfare. And so I was, you know, that was my mindset. I know it's not. And
but I can see how you can make that connotation. You're like, no, I don't want to go to that place again.
Exactly. And so I happened to have a $15,000 line of credit at the time, because I had entertained going back to school briefly. And so I had secured that in anticipation going back. And then, so I used that $15,000 during that 3 months, and it quickly maxed that out. And I went on for another few years just shuffling credit card debt and the line of credit and just trying to ignore everything. And then finally last November, I don't know what it was. I started, I love listening to podcasts, and I have for quite a few years. Shocker, I'm on one now. So. And I just started listening to financial podcasts, and it gave me the idea to go and try to negotiate a lower interest rate on my line of credit. And then the bank person was like, well, why do you want to change it into a loan if you want to plan on getting rid of it? And so I did. And then the more I learned, the more I started taking better steps financially. And so now I started off with about $16,000 in debt with all the credit cards being consolidated in the line of credit. And then now I'm at about 11. So, and that's been in the last year.
That's good.
Yeah. And I managed to pay off my car in the process as well. So, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's really great. That's awesome. That seems like, so a lot has happened. You've dealt with, you know, a lot in your lifetime. Most people probably wouldn't be able to, I mean, handle kind of all those ups and downs and just the, you know, instability. I feel like that's one thing that, you know, you definitely have going for you. You seem very adaptable to situations and independent. And, you know, you realized, even though you had kind of a spending problem and you know, you eventually at some point, whatever triggered it, you realized, okay, I need to make a change. And you did. And now, you know, you've made so much progress. And now I'm so glad that you're here sharing your story on my podcast. I'm glad you listened to Personal Finance Podcasts. And then, you know, kind of maybe when you were listening, that's when I decided to do this listener series. And then here we are. It's fate, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm really glad I'm doing this listener series. There's so many interesting people out there with unique stories like you. So I'm wondering, just so, you know, talking about your debt, do you have a due date or a deadline when you hope to have it all paid off by?
You know, I was planning on this time next year, probably December of next year. And in the last week, I've been looking at needing a new mattress because I've got some back issues. And finally, I realized after getting a better night's sleep on an air mattress in my parents' hallway that perhaps it's time for a new one. And so I'm looking at that expense, as well as the tires on my car are needing to be changed, and the heat on my car just went kaputs on me. So that's going to be another $800. So begrudgingly, I think I'm going to have to put that due date or aspiration date, push that off by probably at least 6 months. But the hope, I would say safely 2 years to pay it off. Yeah.
No, I think it's good no matter what to have a specific date, because you never know. You may surprise yourself and you may actually be able to make, that first date. Like, it's always good to maybe have like one date, but then you could have the plan B date. So no matter what, you do have a date to have it paid off by. So I'm curious, what, besides consolidating all of your debt, what other things have you been doing so you can kind of chip away at your debt and also, continue to live your life and, pay for these expenses without going into more debt?
I've sold quite a few things on Kijiji. And
that's helpful. I love Kijiji.
Gotta love it. And I recently had a job change. So I work in Red Deer, Alberta, so central Alberta, and I was driving 40 minutes every day to work at a clinic. And now I work downtown Red Deer and I walk to work most days. And so that's freed up a lot of cash, just gas wise and time wise. It's, you don't think the 40-minute commute makes a difference, and especially energy-wise, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Luckily, I do live in the city, and still my commute on the subway is about 40 minutes, but whenever I go back home, and if I work from in Vancouver and I, work from the office there, it's, I stay at my parents' house, and it's quite a bit further away. It's in the suburbs. It's like a good hour, I'd say, door to door, maybe even a bit longer. And it just drains you, getting up super early to get the train all the way to the city. And it's just, it really does, a half an hour can make a huge difference in your life.
Absolutely. And are you on the train, or do you take bus in Toronto?
I take the subway, but I am actually close to the train, the GO train, and I haven't tried it yet, so I might try it, but it is an extra expense. Like, it's a bit more expensive than just getting the regular transit pass, so I'm not sure if it's worth it, but I think I want to try it out, time it to see how much time I'd save and see if it's like worth the money. Basically.
For sure.
I have to always kind of balance like how cheap I am to, well, this might save you time, so...
I agree. Gosh. I'm kind of, that's a hard balance
the
to
same
find.
way, right? Yeah, I know.
Sure.
I'm sometimes a bit of a cheapskate, I'll be honest. I know. So I'm curious, and congratulations to you and props to you for, basically breaking the cycle. It's hard growing up, in a household where there isn't a lot of money, and it's hard to kind of get out of that and to, not live just like how you grew up in debt or, money, your paycheck to paycheck or whatever. What have you done, I guess, to make sure you aren't gonna ever get into that place, and that, moving forward, you will be, saving for your future and, living a financially free life? Yeah,
I've been lucky enough that I've always contributed to RSPs since I was 18. But I think recently, in the last year, I've made sure I had that $1,000 buffer. So when the heat went on the car, it's like, this is no big deal. Otherwise, previous to this, I would have had to dip into the credit card or if the line of credit was there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now I have that buffer, and it's funny because now you don't want to touch it.
Exactly.
I'm like, I can probably find some extra money somewhere else that I don't need to touch that thing. Those steps, and just I've stuck to a budget. I'm actually using YNAB, and it's working really well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you because you're. Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with someone about YNAB, which is an app, right, or a program that's called You Need a Budget. But they were American, and I'm like, I wonder if any Canadians use that. But you're Canadian and you use it, So that's cool. I didn't know it was available here, and you know, people in Canada could use it. So that's good to hear. So I'd like to know what is this program that everyone's talking about, and how has it helped you?
Yeah, it's a zero budgeting software, and I'm using the 4.0 version. There is a new one that is strictly online, but I haven't. I like this one so much. I'm like, I don't want to go to the new one yet. So
yeah,
I'm speaking of the old version when I talk about it, and it lets you just same thing as most budgeting softwares and stuff. Your line items of what you want and making sure that every dollar that you bring in is accounted for. And it's got an app, so I'm grocery shopping and I can see how much I have. And I've been really diligent with making sure that I don't go over budget on things like groceries and
which is hard to do. Yeah, because it always happens. You get, especially if you go to the grocery store and you're hungry, that's always the worst. You're like, I want everything. And then you go back and you look at your receipt and you're like, how did we spend all that money? What did we even buy?
Yeah. But I'll say to my boyfriend, I'll be like, well, we're done grocery money. You know, it's a Monday and we don't get paid till Friday. And I'm like, we're out of grocery money. So we're just eating what's in the fridge for,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Me and my husband do a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're having soup again.
Exactly. Whereas before I wouldn't have. I would have been like, it's fine, whatever. But now that's how much is allotted. And you get to a point where you kind of know how much you want to spend on it. And you don't really want to spend that much more on groceries or that much more, things where it's somewhere else. So I'll figure out a way to make it work.
Absolutely. So, besides, I guess, budgeting and living fairly frugally and being very conscious of your spending, once you are debt free, what do you kind of have planned? Like, what are some of your goals? What are the things that you want to do, kind of with that extra income that you won't have to be putting towards your debt?
Definitely doing some catching up on investing. I've started looking into that now that I have a handle of the debt repayment piece. I'm looking at more the investment side of things and getting more interested in the robo-advising and the different companies that are
there's so many
out.
options these days.
Yeah. And
which is kind of exciting. It's like you don't just have to go to an advisor anymore. There's a lot more self-directed routes, which I think are fascinating.
Yeah. And right now I have some RSPs in just your typical banks and their GICs are, most of them are GICs. And that's the other thing is that scarcity mindset I had for so long. All of my GICs and RSPs are all very safe. They're very non-aggressive. Yeah. And I realize now the more educated I get, that I need to change that. And the more okay I'm getting with it as time goes on. And the other thing is my boyfriend's an indie wrestler. So he's a pro wrestler and he does a circuit around through Alberta. And I'm hoping that we get to a point where we can go and travel. If he is able to get a gig in Japan or Mexico, that I can go with him and we keep our expenses low and we can just go and take off. And if I have to go teach English or I can go do different things, then I have the capability of doing that.
Definitely. No, and that's always kind of my main goal is just the more money I accumulate or save and make, it's all just so I can have more flexibility and freedom in my life. So I won't have to make more choices. I can, you know what I mean? Like just have the freedom of choice instead of being forced to make a choice, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I totally hear you. So before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share? You did, mention of your MS diagnosis. Did you want to share anything particular about that? I mean, I'm not sure if you want to share anything about your story or not.
No, I've been fairly lucky with my MS. I have relapse remitting, which is out of the different types is your fairly less aggressive one. And I've really been lucky in that I don't have many symptoms and it doesn't affect me a whole lot day to day. And I'm not on any medications right now. But,
oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. And I think there was being diagnosed so young. It gave me a lot of shame around it. I think I was very, very upset at my body, like it had let me down, or it was, I had done something to cause this. And I think over time, you can let that go. And I'm in the process of letting that go. And I see that I work really closely with people with MS. And I see that some people don't even acknowledge that they have it. And I hope it's not because of any shame. And I really just want to kind of get rid of that and get rid of that stigma of it being shameful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. And, I confided in you over email that I, have, or my husband had a family member who experienced MS. So it's a tough situation, and just like you mentioned, it is, when you are diagnosed with something like that, it is not something to be ashamed of, but it's unfortunate, if people don't talk about it, you don't feel comfortable maybe sharing or talking about it. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up just in case someone else is listening to this right now and maybe just needed to hear what you just said. And, I think it's important to talk about it and be open about these types of things.
Exactly. It's no longer, I talk with a lot of people, and 20 years ago, with 20 plus years ago, it was very much, don't tell anyone, don't tell work. It was a black mark, and it's no longer that way. And so I really want to work towards making sure that people no longer feel that way about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Erika, for taking some time and chatting with me and sharing your story. I'm sure, people listening will be getting a lot out of your story that you shared with me today.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate you doing this and giving people a voice.
No problem. Anytime. And that was episode 73 of the Mo Money podcast and another listener series episode in the can. Thank you to Erika Lutz for sharing her story with me and with all of you. It's so inspiring to hear these stories, and I really appreciate her sharing all of that on the show with me. It's an honor, honestly, it really is. And if you have a story that you want to share, it can be big, small, whatever, it doesn't matter. The whole point of me doing this series is to have just people that aren't necessarily in the personal finance sphere, like a blogger or an expert, but just, a person that has a story that they want to share with others so they can learn from their successes, their failures, just their journey. And that's what inspires me. I've learned so much through this series. So I'm excited to hear from more of you. If you want to be on the show to chat with me, and I promise I'm super nice, I don't bite, just email me at jessica@jessicamorehouse.com and I will reach out to you and we'll get chatting and hopefully get you on this show. So thank you again for listening to this episode, and I will see you back here next Wednesday with the fabulous Letitia Stiles as my guest. And we're kind of nearing the end, guys. We've got a couple weeks left, but then I'm going to kind of take a little bit of break in December. So it's exciting times, guys. Exciting times. All right. See you next Wednesday.